All right, we should now be live. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I see there's a lot of activity in the comment section already. Nice to see some familiar faces or some familiar profile names. All right, so let's get started. Hello, my name is Michal. I am a sound designer at Krotos. And you are now watching the 4th episode of the Krotos livestream series. And thank you very much for tuning in again. And if you're not tuning in again, maybe tuning in for the first time, I'm just going to give you a brief description of what you have stumbled upon. Krotos is a software company based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and we develop products for games, post-production, and music. And we aim to change the way that people design and perform sound to make it faster, easier, and more inspiring. And if you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website, krotosaudio.com. There should be a link in the description. There you can read more about our products or maybe check them out for yourself. Every one of them has a free 10-day demo. So be sure to check that out. And if you're here, please say hello in the comment box. I am joined by my colleagues, Linda and Andrew, who will be answering any of your questions. And last but not least, as you probably already know, we are running a giveaway as part of the stream. If you have signed up via link for the stream, you don't need to do anything. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation, hopefully. And if you haven't signed up, there should be a link in the description, or it will be probably pasted in the live chat as well. The winner gets drawn at random at the end of the demo and will win a copy of Weaponiser Fully Loaded. So be sure to do that before we get into the actual demo part. And by the way, today we are actually delivering and there is going to be a drum roll at the end. Oh, there we go. I just saw the question. All right, but what are we going to be covering today? Recently, as you maybe know, we relaunched one of our flagship products called Weaponiser, and you can see Weaponiser over here. And maybe you're unfamiliar with the product, so I'm just going to give you a really brief description. So Weaponiser is in essence a really, really powerful sequencer, which allows you to get a variety of sounds fast. And what I mean by that is I have a couple of engines in which I can queue in assets. And let's say I want a gun. And I can load up to 5 assets per bank and layer them on top of each other. And every time I trigger, it will trigger a different selection of the assets. I can then randomize them. I can change the level. I can mix them in real time using our onboard mixer. And I can add synthesized layers over here and convolution reverb. So that's a really, really basic description of Weaponiser. We'll get into more in a second, but we have recently relaunched it because as I said, it is a powerful sequencer, and beforehand it was focusing on weapons, but it essentially gives you a lot of variety for any kind of one-shot sound. So we have wishes, we have magic, we have footsteps, we have cinematic sounds, we have user interface sounds, and we even have some musical content. And I thought it would be interesting if I gave you a little demo of each of those libraries, but in the meantime, I could also show you a couple of tips and tricks on how to design faster and easier using Weaponiser. And essentially, I would like to maximize the impact of Weaponiser on your workflow. And we're going to be looking at some examples from working with motion picture and some examples of working in a purely design sense, say if you're designing for a game or maybe for an application. And Another thing is that, as I mentioned, all of our products have a free 10-day demo. So if you'd like to experiment with Weaponiser on your own, the demo version of Weaponiser actually now comes with a selection of presets from every one of those libraries. So you can check them out for yourself. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is a short video clip, and we're going to be using the whooshes and magic libraries to cover the sound of the scene. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a brief demonstration of those libraries, and we're going to start with whooshes. Whooshes are very commonly needed sounds in whatever type of sound design, and you usually need a lot of them, and you need them to be varied, but you also need them to be of a specific aesthetic. And Weaponiser essentially delivers all of that. As you can see, we have a pretty large preset selection. And as you can hear, we have some natural sounding whooshes here. And every time I am triggering, we get a different selection of assets, so we got a lot of variety. And for example, that sounds nice, but maybe I'm covering a scene where I need the tail of the sound to be a bit shorter. And every preset in Weaponiser is not actually just a static package of sounds, it is fully customizable. So I can go into the tail layer and I can just increase the speed, which will change the length of the asset, and use the envelope mode of the level control to shorten it a bit, to make a little bit of a fade out. And I can do the same with the kick here, and now it's going to have a shorter tail. So everything is very easily customizable here, and that goes with every library. So just a couple more examples. Another thing is that you can move all the layers separately. So for example, this here has been designed as a whoosh, but maybe I want to take the impact part of the whoosh to the start of the trigger, and then I want this to be kind of like an impact with a reverse fade. And now I've moved stuff around, I mixed it a bit, and I have a fade. Pardon me, I have an impact. So everything is very easily customizable here. And we also have a very popular magic library, which is now a part of Weaponiser Freeloaded, which consists of generic and elemental spells. And again, I can move everything around. Customize it to my liking. So a nice selection right here, a really good starting point, or to be used as is. But I'm going to show you how you can use Weaponiser to your advantage if designing a sound for a scene. And the first thing that we're going to cover looks like this. So we are dealing here with kind of this abstract pass-by of a light source. And normally we would track lay and get all the layers here in our DAW, and it would work all right, but we would have a static selection of assets, and maybe we want to experiment a bit, or maybe we want to hone in on that perfect sound for the scene, or maybe, alternatively, maybe we are delivering the sounds to a client and we want to present him with a couple of options of how the scene could sound like. And I find that if you not only deliver a high quality sound effect, but you also give your client a variety of different equally high quality sounds, you can really, it can really help you build that relationship. And with Weaponiser, it's actually really easy. So we're going to use Weaponiser to create the sound for the scene, and we're also going to use it to create some variety, to give ourselves a couple of options. And in terms of design, just really quickly, I have chopped up the scene into the appearance of the light source over here. Then we have the kind of spin over here, and then we have the actual whoosh kind of pass by sound, and a lot of glimmer and glitter included. And we are going to take assets, presets from the whoosh and magic libraries, and we're going to customize them a bit and create the sound for the scene. So we're going to start with the beginning, shockingly, and we're going to design the sound for the light source appearing on the right. And this is a preset I really like called Ethereal Whoosh, and it sounds like this. And I'm just going to start customizing. I'm going to get rid of the body layer here because I think it's a little too long. And I'm going to shorten this one as well. I'm going to just quickly send it to a reverb send. And that's all right, but it's not really varied. And we also need some kind of like a glimmering texture for this. There's a lot of like shimmering lights here. And I'm just going to see it. I can very easily browse for things in our content browser. And I'm going to see if there are any chime recordings that are going to help us. I'm just adding a couple of sounds here, giving myself a couple of options. I'm just going to add a little bit of a fade in and a fade out and move it back in the mix just a little bit. And now it sounds like this. And that's okay, but I want to have more options. So I'm just going to click here and add speed modulation, which will play back the speed at random, changing the pitch. So every time it will sound a little bit different, but we are still in the same ballpark. And now let's take a look. And I think that sounds pretty okay. The only thing that I'm adding in my DAW is a little bit of panning automation. And now let's take a look at the spin part. We're going to open another instance of Weaponiser. And we're going to use the magic library. And we need something that's spinny and sparkly for the sound. And fortunately for us, there is actually a preset that's called Spinny Sparkle Spell, which really strains my S pronunciation. I'm sorry. But let's take a look. And I think that's a really nice preset over here, but I think it's a little bit too aggressive. And that's because there is a fire whoosh underneath it, as I'm just going to get rid of that. And remix it just a little bit to get the whoosh up. And I actually think that's already all right. you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So let's just listen to them together. And that sounds fine. I'm just going to move it into the right spot in the panorama. And now we need to take care of the longer pass by. And the thing that I wanted to show you guys is that you don't necessarily need to only use the wishes and magic libraries to cover wishes and magic. Your sound association is only limited by your own creativity, and the fact that we labeled something as UI doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use it as UI. So for example, there's this preset I really like in the UI category, which is called UI Fantasy Magic Start. And I think that's a really nice starting point for our pass-by. I'm actually going to just remix it a bit. I don't really want the impact to be here. And that sounds all right. I'm just going to change the play range of the kind of the reverse swell that we're listening to. And that's okay. Let's just fade it a bit. So as you can see, I can customize everything really easily. And I want to give myself a couple more options here. So I'm just going to search for the same actual asset. And I'm going to add it a couple of times to the same bank, but just select different ranges of the playback. And it sounds like this now. It's a little bit different, but I still want to have more variety. I want to have more options, so I'm just going to get the speed modulation running. And now it's really varied, so I'm getting a lot of options. And that's okay, but I also think that this pass-by could benefit a lot from a wish. So I'm just going to search for a wish that I really like. And again, I'm getting those in the same bank to cycle through them to give myself a couple of options. And now it will sound a little bit like this. And I think that's fine. I still think that the wish is going to be a little too short for the scene, but let's just take a listen. Pardon me, a little bit of a hiccup here. I think I designed it in a different layer. I'm very sorry. I'm just going to redo it really quickly, and we'll be back in no time. But the other benefit is that you'll see that if I'm not talking you through it, this actually takes minutes. So this is a really, really easy workflow here. There we go. Should be good this time. And that's fine. And there's just a little bit of panning here. And I'm actually going to decrease the speed of the whoosh. And this way I'm going to extend the length of the whoosh as well. And now it sounds like this. And I think it's going to sound better. I think it covers the scene way better now. I'm just going to take a quick look if there are any unanswered questions. One second. I'm just changing my mic gain. a little bit. And okay, I will be moving on. I just need to get them all together here, and we're going to listen to them real quickly. Just give me 1 second here. Yeah, this is the layer I designed and before, and I lost the start of the sound, but now it should all be good. So let's take a quick listen. And now every time I re-trigger it, it's going to be slightly different. So I could re-trigger it a couple of times, get maybe record it loop by loop a couple of times and just hone in on that perfect sound, or maybe render it a couple of times with the video and send it to the client and show him a couple of options. Maybe he wants a longer pass by here, or maybe a higher pitched swell. I think it's always really good to show a couple of options. I added just a couple of more sounds underneath, but I think that this scene is essentially covered. So let's take a listen a couple of times. And just like that, we not only have designed a sound, but we have designed 3 engines, which are playing back a style of a sound. And this way we're getting ourselves a lot of variety by essentially doing in the same amount of time which it would take us to track lay. And we can mix it in real time here as well in Weaponiser. So I think that's a really nice workflow. Are there any questions to this part actually? I'm just looking at the chat real quickly, and I'm not seeing anything here. So I'll just be moving on, and we'll take a look at another video clip in a minute. But before that, I wanted to show you a different library. And we're going to be talking about Footsteps, and Footsteps and Weaponiser are actually a match made in heaven. And that's because of some of the cool features we have that allow you to control playback really nicely. So I'm just going to quickly go into the library. And as we know, with Footsteps, usually you need a lot of variety, and you also usually need to be able to sync them perfectly well, and you need expressiveness. And with Weaponiser, all of that is actually really, really easy, because we have a selection of footstep presets where we have cut them up into heel and toe assets, and a cool thing is that each one of those engines that you see here can be triggered separately. So if you have a MIDI keyboard, which I do over here, every time you trigger a note, and actually we have designed this scene that you can see over here by just using one MIDI note to call Weaponiser. And in Reaper, if you want to call all the sounds at once, you can use the C5 key, and that's C4 in most other DAWs. And if you want to trigger them separately, you just move up a semitone. So for example, if I only want to trigger the body layer, that's D5 in Reaper. And if I want to trigger the toe layer, that's D sharp. So this way I have full control over the heel and toe. I'm just going to get rid of the reverb real quickly. So I can match that perfectly. And if that's not enough, we get actually a lot more expression out of it because the Weaponiser actually responds to velocity. So if we want really quiet footsteps, we can tap the key really, really lightly. And if you want something a bit louder, we can just hit that key really hard. So as you can see with Weaponiser, you actually have a nice Foley Studio available as well. Okay. And I'm just going to show you a selection of assets from the Footstep library because we have a really nice selection of both different footwear and different surface types. So just a brief demonstration before we move on. And you can trigger them either by triggering a pre-designed full footstep that contains heel and toe. And we have presets that do just that. And you can see them here. It's just a full footstep. And that's fine. And if you want more control, you just go to a different version of that same preset. That allows you to trigger heel and toe separately. So as you can hear, you essentially have your footstep needs covered by Weaponiser as well. And now, after this demonstration, we are going to be taking a look at a different video clip. And I'm going to use this opportunity to show you how Weaponiser can essentially save you hours of work and stress if you're met with changes to the visuals. I'm just going to see if there are any questions. Okay, I see a question. How easy or hard is it to export the results to track in your DAW? I mean, can you export all separate layers or is it only the end result? You can export each layer separately. If you are getting an instance of Weaponiser, you can select it to be in multi-output mode in most of the DAWs, or you can just route one of the Weaponiser outputs to a bus track and render out each layer separately. So you get a lot of control. You can then mix it with your favorite plugins, do whatever you want with them. And the velocity affects the level of playback. All right, and now let's move on to the other clip. And say we are working with a movie that has a lot of CGI in it, and seeing that we are all in lockdown, there probably is going to be a lot of animation and CGI-driven movies in the future. And we have a scene to cover that looks like this. And for the purposes of this demonstration, let's just say that I had the time to do the assets beforehand, and I have created a nice riser for the start, which sounds like this. And making risers in Weaponiser is actually super easy because you can change the speed parameter to be an envelope as well. And as you can see, we have a gradual rise of the string assets over here. And what else have I done here? We also have, so that's going to be triggered the moment we start the approach for the planet. And then we are going to be triggering a impact where the approach is actually like stopping to add a little bit of a thump to the sound. So this is what I designed for it. And one more layer here. I have created a string cluster for the planetary passby, and it looks like this. And I just need to, okay, here we go. And together, I'm just going to mix it real quickly. And I only added a little one shot over there. And that's all well and good. And maybe I've just finished working on it and I'm happy with the results and I'm sending it over, but something has happened. A decision has been made to extend the VFX shot. And now if I try the same thing, nothing fits anymore. The shot has been extended, and if I was just track laying, this could mean potential hours of rework. I could essentially might need to do everything from scratch because I have just track laid everything, but with Weaponiser, you don't have to commit to a design up to the very last minute, and I think that's a real lifesaver here. So we're just going to take the sounds that have been previously created, and we're just going to remix them slightly to fit the visual. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to figure out how long the approach is right now. And the approach is around 5.5 seconds long. And fortunately, we have the timeline tool over here, and I can just really easily move stuff around. I'm going to actually extend the synth riser over here. Okay. And I'm going to go into the thumb layer where I have all the strings, and I'm going to just slightly extend them. And if I solo, I will only see this layer over here, which allows me to really easily check the length of it. I'm just going to extend the play range. That might be even too long. And a really cool feature over here is that actually the speed envelope snaps to anything that we have here, which means that anything we have, it's still going to be the same kind of a riser, but extended over the longer period of time. So we don't have to redo any kind of automation. We just extend the play range, and now we should have a new, longer riser. Okay, let's take a listen with the video. And it fits way better now by just a couple of clicks. And now with the impact, it could be as easy as just getting the MIDI region to fit the moment a bit better, but I wanted to kick it up a notch. And let's say I think that with how it looks right now, we could add a little bit more of a cadence to the sound. And we're going to just go into the timeline again, and I'm going to very quickly do some surgical movements over here and add a little bit of a space for the impact. And that's all well and good. It has a little bit of a breathing space, but there's another thing that I actually wanted to mention. We have a very wide selection of assets, as you can already see, included in Weaponiser Fully Loaded, but that doesn't mean that you're only limited to what we have to offer. If you have your own recordings, or if you have a library that you really like, you can definitely integrate that into your Weaponiser workflow as well. So for example, there is a sound I really like, and I want to add it into my design over here. So I just drag and drop it from SoundMiner or Basshead or whatever I'm using. It can be File Explorer, or you can find them here. And now I can just quickly change the length of the play range. And now an external sound is part of my design really quickly. And let's take a listen. So there we go, quickly integrated into Weaponiser over here. And for the last part, which is the string cluster, I am just going to lower the speed of the string cluster, which will make it longer. And just like that, it should fit the scene way better. So let's take a listen to all of them together. And everything sounds way better, saving us potential hours of work here. Obviously, there could be much more done in terms of mix over here, but in essence, we have taken something that if you were just using track laying might have been unsalvageable, and we have changed it to fit the visual way better, and I think that's a really nice workflow to have. Okay, and now we're going to be moving on to a different asset category. But before that, I am just going to show you a couple of cinematic sounds that come included in the Weaponiser Fully Loaded package. So we have a lot of transition sounds. We have loads of impacts or whooshes or string stingers. Your bread and butter sounds of cinematic sound design. And all of them really easy to remix. As you can probably hear, I used some of those assets to make the planetary approach. Something for the horror genre. Some musical string stingers. And as you can see, you get loads of variety from just one preset over here, and in the trailers library, it's like 70 of them. So you get a lot of things to choose from. Some whooshes here as well. All right, I'm just going to take a look if there are any questions. Can Weaponiser be used in Wise and Fmod? It is not an interactive plugin, but actually the workflow for exporting assets for interactive media, such as game audio, is super easy. You just render them out into multi-output, and then you can use integrations such as, for example, WAPI transfer to go straight from the assets created in Weaponizer straight into your containers in Wise, or I'm sure there is a different solution for Fmod as well. If you'd like to know a little bit more about that, I actually covered that in the previous webinar episode I did. That was episode 2. And I'm actually showing you how I'm creating some gun assets in Weaponizer and then preparing them for export for Wise. So I think that's a really nice workflow there. And there is a question, so when you drag from SoundMinder and drop it into Weaponizer, where does the sound file go? Where is it stored? It isn't really stored anywhere. It is referenced from the disk file location. We only are generating new files after you have committed and started a render. Everything else is just referenced from its location. So if you're just prototyping in Weaponizer, you're not adding any files anywhere. Okay, and now that we have that covered, I think we can move on to UI. And we have loads of really cool UI assets here, but I thought I could show you another thing, which is how easily you can design sounds from scratch. And maybe you just don't like using presets, or maybe you would like to do something completely original, or that's just the workflow that you prefer. So I thought I could show you how I would approach designing something from scratch, and I could design a UI asset or a UI asset engine. And we're going to try a little bit of audience participation. So would you prefer if I did a science fiction UI asset or a fantasy UI asset? It's a tie over here. Oh, no, more options coming in. It is much more of a split decision than I thought. All right, I'm doing both, I guess, because why not? Let's start with a fantasy one because I think we have more hype for that. So I'm just starting with a clean start preset, which doesn't have anything in it. And I'm going to treat all of those separate layers here as a kind of a different range frequency-wise. So I'm going to use the onset for the high frequencies, the body for the mid-range, and the thumb for the lower range. And I'm going to start with the high range here, and I'm going to just add a couple of chimes as we did before. So this is going to be a start of my high layer. And actually, I think our fantasy UI sound is going to be made out of a book. So I'm just going to browse for some assets for flipping pages. And I'm just going to drag them in here. Add some envelope here. And let's EQ it just a bit to get rid of the low end here. And maybe just compress it just a bit. A bit too much. All right, and now for the thumb layer, we are going to take a look at some kind of drum-like impacts. We have a couple of pre-designed impacts over here. So I'm just going to drag and drop them. And I'm actually going to take a kick sample, something quite natural. And that's starting to sound better. I'm just going to mix it a bit. I don't really know if that chime is helping us here, so I'm going to change it into a chime cluster. Let's go with this one. Add some randomization here. And for the body layer, I'm going to browse for some whooshes. There are some cinematic whooshes I made a while back, which are part of the cinematic trailer library. So let's take a look at those. But they are quite low, and I wanted this to be the mid layer, so I still need to add something else. I just think I'm going to add them in the middle. And a different whoosh. As you can see, I have a lot to choose from. Maybe this will work. A little bit too aggressive, so I will just keep searching. Yeah, let's go with this one. I was just going to quickly EQ it to make it a little bit more mid-rangey. Leave some space for the other ones. And let's actually add some cadence, because if I'm triggering them together, I don't think they sound particularly nice. A little bit too much of a cadence. Let's move them around. This sounds okay. I think the thumb layer could be mixed down a little bit. And we have a nice little magical UI sound over here made from scratch. And I haven't just designed one sound. As you can hear, as you can see, it is quite fast over here. And we have a selection of assets. All right, and now moving on to the UI. For the sci-fi UI, I'm going to take the same approach, but look for different assets. So for the sci-fi, I think we are going to go something glassy for the high layer. I have a lot of stuff to choose from, so I'm just going to get them in here. And I'm actually going to add them to two different banks, and I'm just going to change the speed of this one, and we're going to create a little bit of an original layer here. And again, get rid of the unwanted frequencies, keep it clean. Maybe a little bit of saturation to make it warmer. And for the thumb layer, we can actually go for something a little bit more synthetic. And I'm going to start with this sound I really like. But that's not all of it. We're going to utilize the synth engines over here. So the thumb synth engine is, as the name implies, really good for thumpy sounds. And we can change the pitch envelope, the amplitude envelope, the starting frequency. I'm just going to add it to really quickly add this little thump sound. And maybe like a button click will go here. Here we go. All right, that's a good start. And for the mid layer, there were a lot of really nice electrical signals that we recorded that I think are really sci-fi in nature, and I'm just going to add them to the mid layer. And let's just see how it goes. I think that's a really nice combination here. Maybe just space them out a little bit. See how that goes. Let's add some flanger because it's sci-fi after all. Add a couple of voices. Maybe mix it a little bit. And there we go. And just like that, we have a really nice selection of UI sounds that every time I trigger, we're getting a different selection. So I can very easily use it to populate a container in a game or add them to someone quickly tapping a screen in a scene. So there we go. Really quick and clean way of designing presets for yourself. I'm just going to take a look if there is anything I have missed. There is a question if we do tutorials on the very basics of sound design. We haven't really done that, but we can definitely do that in the future. If there is anything that you are interested in, we can definitely cover that. And now I'll just move on to a quick demonstration of the UI library. So as you can see, we have a lot of different genres here. So we have some fantasy ones. Oh, sorry, I just saw that there was a question. Okay, there was a question, can the MIDI notes be reassigned or relearned? I don't know about that. I think unfortunately they are not. So the selection is from C4 up in most DAWs and from C5 and Reaper. Okay, I'm just going to present the UI sounds really quickly. So we have the fantasy selection, which are made from kind of book flipping assets, and we also have the magical ones made from chimes. Then we have a selection of modern ones, which are kind of like what you would expect in a modern smartphone. Then moving on, we have the retro section, inspired by old consoles. Then the sci-fi section. And then there's the tech section, which is kind of like a merge between the modern and the sci-fi libraries, which is what you would kind of expect in a near future smartphone, and if the near future even has something like a smartphone. Near future tech gadget. And another cool thing is that you can actually design your own UI sounds by using strictly the synth engines over here. So for example, this UI sound is playing back by just using the synth engine and the body layer. And the last thing we are going to be covering before we announce the winner of the giveaway is the beats section. As I said, it is essentially a very powerful sequencer, so it is perfect for any kind of musical design. And on each layer, you can place a different type of an instrument or a different kind of a percussive instrument, and trigger them separately or together, depending on what you need. And with everything here, you can very easily customize them again, and you can very easily worldize your drum by using the reverb and just drag and drop any kind of a impulse response. And change it on the fly. And you can get a little bit more creative. We have a bit more designy impulse responses as well. And the last thing that I wanted to cover is the burst mode. And we're actually going to use the burst mode to create a drum roll. Burst mode is usually used for automatic weapons. And by the way, all the weapon recordings from previous versions of Weaponiser are still here. They're still available. This is very much still possible to do weapons here. But I'm going to show you how to use the burst mode to create a drum roll, because why not? If we switch on burst mode here, we can control the fire rate and very easily create a snare roll. And if I was using it as it is, with the tail mode switched off, it would trigger everything at the same time, which is usually very important if you're designing weapons, because you don't want to declutter them with tails every time. But this time, we're going to change the tail mode to add a cymbal hit at the end of our drum roll. So if we were using it as it is right now, it would be triggering the cymbal in the tail layer every time. But if we switch it off, it is only going to trigger it at the last time. And I think that's a pretty decent drum roll. We can change the fire rate. And that's a really nice way of just a little trick here. And I'm going to see if we have a winner for the giveaway. That actually concludes my demonstrations here. So thank you very much for watching, and I'm just waiting for a message about the winner, and we're going to do a drum roll finally. All right, I hope everyone is ready, because we have a winner. All right, I'm starting the drum roll. The winner is Eneas Menzel. Congratulations, you have just won a copy of Weaponiser Fully Loaded. I hope you're with us. And I hope I haven't totally butchered your name. All right, I see you in the comment section, so congratulations again. I hope you enjoy your new tool, and I hope you all enjoyed my little presentation here. I hope you gain something from it. If you like this episode, be sure to leave a like, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's anything you'd like us to cover, I can see that there is a suggestion for some basic of synthesis. We're happy to cover anything that you'd like us to cover. So all of those suggestions are really, really welcome. If you still have any questions right now, I am happy to answer them. But I see the chat is mainly filled with congratulatory messages to NAS, and rightfully so. I'm just going to wait a little bit. If anyone posts a question, I'm just going to answer it. And if not, we're going to wrap up in a minute. Right. Thank you very much to my colleagues, Linda and Andrew, for helping me with the webinar here. And thank you very much all for joining us today. I hope you stay safe and I hope you stay creative, and we will see you next time.